activity trackers are getting a lot more popular these days, much to my surprise. When they first came out, I was like, they'll never last, that'll be a fad, but they're getting much more sophisticated and a lot more popular. Now, over the years, I've had a number of these myself. I've had a lot of clients use them, so I figured I'd give you my experience, my 2 cents here in this video, if you're considering using them, and I'll follow up with my recommendation at the end on the best way I think to make use of this information. So the first thing to consider is, what are these things actually doing? Well, most of them are tracking some sort of steps, calorie estimations, and heart rate. Now, the step thing in particular is very good. The reason for this is because it's getting a very good correlation with something called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is the physical activity you're doing outside of your workout. And in many cases, that can be a very big influence to your health, wellness, and weight control. Up until now, it's kind of been not really a good way to measure that sort of thing. That's the great thing about workouts, is they're quantifiable physical activity. But the activity we do outside of it, not that easy to quantify, but that's what these do. They help us to measure and quantify our NEAT so that we can improve it and make a bigger impact on our overall health, wellness, and quality of life. It's worth recognizing that these are not accurate numbers. This does not directly measure calories, steps, or heart rate. Instead, it has a number of sensors on it that are measuring things that are related to these things. And it's feeding the information through formulas and saying, it's probably about this many steps, this many calories, and this is probably about what your heart rate is. That's why some activity trackers can give you vastly different information, and the information itself can be an estimation at best. The good news is you probably don't need that much accuracy and sophisticated equipment when it comes to measuring your NEAT. The trending change over time is what's most important. If you go from averaging 6,000 steps a day to 10,000 steps a day, who cares if it's really 6 or 10,000 steps? It's an increase of like a little over 30%. That's what's the most important thing. Same with calorie burn. Is it really 5,000 calories, 2,000? Who cares? But if it's an increase, then you're on the right track. With that said, not a big fan of the heart rate on these suckers. As an endurance athlete myself, I know that a good heart rate monitor should be pretty darn accurate and very quick to respond to changes in your heart rate. These don't do that, to my experience. Some of them are much more accurate than others, but if you're looking for using heart rate in a fitness athletic setting, like interval-based heart rate monitoring, you're better off going with other options. The long-term use of these things is another concern that I've had, because a lot of people get them and then they stop using them after like the new toy phase wears off. And I think that's a concern that we need to address, because a toy or a gadget that you're not going to use long-term means that you're not going to be developing any sort of habits or changes in the long term. And I'm always thinking to myself, what can we do long term? Short term doesn't do us a whole lot of good. Lastly, the most important thing is these things don't actually do anything of themselves. They track basic movement and activity, and they give you information, and all of that adds up to a hill of beans. Doesn't do anything for you. What you do with that information is what's most important. If you take that information, become more aware of what you're doing on a daily basis, and make behavior changes and modifications in your daily habits, that's what's most important. However, if you don't do anything with the information and you just look at it and you go, interesting, but you keep doing things the same way every single day, it's going to be a waste of your money. Behavior change modification, that's the thing that's going to get you results. And these can help spark that, but if it doesn't, well, it's not worth it. So here are my recommendations. Number one, if steps and general calorie burn is the most important thing for this, don't worry too much about getting an external device. If you have your phone on you most of the time, like I keep my phone in my pocket, get a simple step tracker app. And it's going to be a fraction of the cost. You don't need to charge another battery. You don't need to worry about extra hardware or carry an extra cable with you when you're traveling. And it's still going to give you roughly the same kind of information that you can then use at a fraction of the cost. If you're interested in using the heart rate features, particularly in an athletic setting, go with something with a chest strap to it, MyZone, Polar Electrodes, Garmin's, these sorts of things, because they're gonna be a hell of a lot more accurate and a lot more responsive so that you can do things like heart rate based interval training a lot more effectively and efficiently. And lastly, if you are looking at getting something that you're gonna have on your wrist, highly recommend putting up the extra little cost to get as much functionality as you can out of these things. Something that is just a step tracker and maybe heart rate, it's more likely you're going to abandon it after a period of time. But something like smartwatches, Garmin, GPSs, something that gives you a lot more functionality beyond just the steps and heart rate is probably something you're going to wear a lot longer and get a lot more use out of over time and get a lot more beneficial information that you can then use to improve your performance, modification of habits, and have a more active lifestyle. So let me know your thoughts. Have you been using these? Do you have any tips for folks down below that can be helpful? Have I missed anything that I forgot to mention? Let me know down below in the comments section, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Till then, be fit, live free.